Good morning, this is Mrs. Ryan, and today I have the privilege of sharing one of my all time favorite stories with you. When I was a little girl, I would go to my grandma and grandpa's farm, and this is one of the stories that they would read to me. So it probably doesn't come as a big surprise to you that the title of this story is Grandpa's Farm. And down here you see that James Flora. James Flora is you're right, the author. And we know that author writes the story, author writes the story, author writes the story. That's why he came first. But it also says that he did the pictures, which makes him you're right, good job, the illustrator. And we know that illustrators illustrate, illustrators illustrate, illustrators illustrate, which means he made the pictures for Grandpa's farm. 4 tall tales. Do you know my grandpa? He lives on a farm. It's the first farm beyond Split Rock Pond. It has a big barn, a nice house, horses and cows live in the barn, and Grandma and Grandpa live in the house. Grandpa is very tall. He's almost as tall as the trees. Sometimes tired birds sit on his hat. I suppose they think he's a tree and that has lost all his leaves in a storm. Grandpa just lets them sit there and even feeds them worms and bugs if he happens to be digging. My grandpa is very nice to animals and boys and girls too. When I sit on Grandpa's lap, his beard tickles the top of my head, only he says it really isn't his beard, it's his eyebrows. Years ago, I didn't have any hair on my chin, Grandpa said. I just had big bushy eyebrows. Then along came the big wind of 34. The wind was so strong that it blew my eyebrows all the way down to my chin. That's the same wind that brought the big blue barn, Grandpa pointed with his big finger. Oh, but that's a long, windy story. I'll tell it to you some other time. Oh, now, Grandpa, I begged. Please tell me now. Very well, Grandpa said. I will, if you will just turn the page. Should we turn the page? Do you want to find out what's going to happen? Oh, I know I do. Let's turn the page. The Big Wind of 34. When Grandma and I first came to the farm, there was no barn, just a house. We were very poor and couldn't afford to build a barn. We had a cow and she had to sleep outside. She didn't like that at all. On cold days, she would get so angry that she wouldn't give us any milk. We tried to explain to the cow how sorry we were, but she wouldn't listen. When a cow gets good and mad, she just won't listen to anybody. Then, one day in 34, the wind started to blow. Oh my, how it did blow! Harder and harder until it blew all the leaves off the trees. Stronger and stronger until it blew the trees away too. I had to tie down the cow or she would have been carried away too. Even so, she sailed around in the sky like a big cow kite. I've never seen such a strong wind in my whole life. I just had finished digging a deep well in the backyard. I had to dig it down 40 feet, and that was hard work. Well, that wind huffed and puffed until it blew the well right out of the ground and carried it away. I never did see it again. Oh my goodness, is everything going to be left on the farm? That made me so mad that I ran out of the house and I threw a big chunk of firewood at that wind. It must have hurt him. It must have made him stop and think how mean he was being to Grandma and me, because the next thing I saw was a big blue barn sailing through the air. It swished over the house and it settled there where you see it now.
It was a good barn, but it didn't have any doors, so I shouted, "Hey, wind, you forgot the doors!" That old wind turned right around and blew back wherever it had come from, and in no time at all I could hear him coming back, and sure enough he had the doors for the barn, and he even fetched a pigeon house you see on top. When the wind had gone, I went out and looked around that fine barn. It was just what I wanted. The only trouble was that it had settled on our cow's tail and broken it off. Well, that made me very sad. But Grandma said not to worry. She said she had a cow salve that would fix everything. But that's another story, which I will tell you some day.
Oh, please tell me now, Grandpa, I begged. Please tell me now.
Oh, very well, Grandpa said. I'll tell you if you will just turn the page.
Should we turn the page? Do you want to know more? Do you want to hear about the famous cow salve? Me too! Grandma's cow salve. I've never seen such a fine salve as Grandma's cow salve. She rubbed some on the place where the cow's tail had broken off, and the very next day the cow was growing a new tail. Grandma picked up the cut-off tail and rubbed some salve on it too. And do you know what happened? Do you want to take a guess? Can you just take any guess at all what you think might happen? I don't know. A new cow started to grow on that old tail. In no time at all, we had 2 cows instead of 1. Then Grandma rubbed some salve on all the tree stumps left over from the big wind, and new trees started to grow. Oh, that salve could make anything grow. I remember one time we bought a new car and we didn't have a garage, so I chose a big watermelon in the garden. I rubbed some salve on it, and a few days later it was so big that I cut a door in it, scooped out the insides, and I drove the car inside and used it as a garage for more than a year. That salve worked so well on watermelons, I thought I would just put a dab on a cornstalk. All right, there is his garage made out of the watermelon. Do you see what I see? What do you think is going to happen when he puts that salve on the cornstalk? Well, whoosh! That cornstalk grew so fast that it knocked me over. Our pig Wilfred was chewing on an ear of corn, and before he could open his jaws to let go, he was high in the air and going higher. He squealed with fright. I ran and got my axe, and I tried to chop down the cornstalk, but I couldn't do it. It was growing so fast that I could never chop it twice in the same place. Wow, that is fast.
Up it grew. Finally, I couldn't hear Wilfred squeal anymore. He must have stopped squealing and started eating because the corn cobs started to drop. All summer long, Wilfred was up there eating corn and dropping the cobs on our heads. Grandma and I had to wear dishpans on our heads whenever we went out. When summer was over, the cornstalk stopped growing and Wilfred climbed down. He had eaten so much that he weighed over 1,000 pounds. The biggest pig I ever saw. It's a good thing he did get fat. It's very cold up high there in the sky, and he would have frozen stiff without all that fat to keep him warm. Of course, he froze stiff in that terrible winter of '36. Twice as much fat wouldn't have kept him warm that winter. But that's another story which I'll tell you some other time, Grandpa said.
Oh, tell me now, Grandpa, please. Please tell me now, I begged.
Well, I don't mind if I do, Grandpa said, and I will if you will what?
That's right, if you will just turn the page. Shall we turn the page? I think so too. The terrible winter of '36. It got cold very early that year, Grandpa said,
By Thanksgiving it was so cold that our shadows froze on the ground and lay there all winter. Even the icicles were shivering. Grandma used to bring them in by the fire at night. It got colder and colder until Christmas time all the candles on the Christmas trees froze and we couldn't blow them out. They burned all winter long. It got so cold finally that when Grandma and I talked to each other, our words froze. We had to fry them in the frying pan to hear what we were talking about. Then the fire in the stove froze too, and we couldn't cook any more words. Grandma and I had to wait until summer came before we could hear what we had talked about all winter.
And you see right here, they're cooking their words on the stove because when their words came out of their mouth, it was so cold they froze. So let's see, what are they saying to each other in here? The pig froze. What? It's too cold to milk the cow. I saw a bear. Where are my boots? Oh no, the fire is freezing. More wood, please. Pass the salt. I'd like some bacon and eggs. And they didn't know that they had said that until summer. Oh my goodness.
Now, back to Grandpa. After New Year it got even colder, and the clouds froze and fell down with terrible thump, thump, thumps. Grandma and I didn't go out of the house after that. It was too dangerous to walk around on those big, slippery, lumpy clouds. It's just as well we didn't, because it got so cold that even gravity froze. You know what gravity is, don't you? Gravity is the force that makes everything that goes up fall back down to the ground. And when you throw a ball up into the air, gravity makes it come back down so you can catch it. Well, that winter, everything that was up didn't come down. It just froze up there wherever it happened to be. You could look up in the sky and see birds with their wings spread, but they weren't moving. They just hung there in the sky all winter long.
Oh my goodness, that is cold. Ah! Oh my word, what's happening here?
People tell me that over in Big Sneeze County, a hunter shot at a bear just as the bear jumped at him. At that very moment, gravity froze. The bear was frozen in the air, and so were the bullet and the hunter. All winter long, they stared at each other, frozen in the same spot. The bear stared at the bullet. The hunter stared at the bear for 3 whole months. When warm weather finally came, the man thawed out first. He grabbed the bullet out of the air, put it back into his gun, and then he ran home as fast as he could. I never did hear what happened to the bear. All of our horses and cows and pigs were frozen stiff. I built big bonfires under them, but it didn't do any good. They were so cold that they didn't thaw out for 2 years. Everything was frozen but Grandma's little hatchety hen. Grandma had kept the hen in the house all winter. It was a good thing she did, because that little hatchety hen saved the whole farm the very next summer. But that's another story which I'll tell you some other day.
Oh, please tell me now, Grandpa, I begged. Please tell me about the little hatchety hen.
Well, I don't mind if I do, Grandpa said. I'll tell you now if you will just...
What? That's right.
Turn the page. So here we go.
Let's turn the page and find out about that little hatchy hen.
Now, Grandma's little hen laid lots of eggs, and then she would hatch them. There was nothing she liked better than sitting on eggs and hatching them out. She was a very good hatcher. No matter what kind of eggs you put in her nest, she could hatch them. She could hatch chickens and ducks and geese and turtles and bluebirds and ostriches, and once she hatched a bald eagle. One time Grandma spilled some flour in the nest, and I'll be hornswoggled if that little hatchety hen didn't hatch a loaf of bread. And that's how we found out that Hatchy Hen could hatch out almost anything you put in her nest. First, we put a doorknob under her, and do you know what she hatched out?
What do you think she hatched out? You're right.
A brand new front door with a window and a ruffled curtain and a coat of red paint. We put an old alarm clock in Hatchy Hen's nest, and she hatched out 12 wristwatches. Grandma and I gave them away for Christmas.
You see that? Oh my goodness. Can you imagine a chicken that hatched out watches that you could wear and read the time? Oh my goodness, she is quite a hatcher.
Whenever Grandma needed a new dress, she would put some buttons and thread in the nest. First thing you knew, the little red hen would hatch out the prettiest dress you ever did see. There didn't seem to be anything little hen couldn't hatch. If you put in a spark plug and a steering wheel under her, she would hatch out a fine new automobile or tractor. Once Hatchy Hen found some boards and nails and put them in her nest and hatched out a whole new hen house for herself. She was very handy hen to have around the farm.
You see all those things she's hatching? She's like better than going to the store. My goodness, what a fortunate thing to have a hen like that.
Of course, we could never be sure just what Hatchy Hen would hatch out of certain things. Once when Grandma was going on a trip, she needed a new trunk for her clothes. So she put a little cigar box under Hatchy Hen and said, "Now, hatch me a nice new trunk." Hatchy Hen hatched her a trunk all right, but it wasn't the kind of trunk Grandma wanted. It was a elephant's trunk with a whole elephant attached to it. Grandma used it anyway. She said it was better than a regular clothes trunk.
Can you imagine going on a trip and instead of putting your clothes inside a suitcase, you just hung them all on the trunk of an elephant? Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be something?
Another time I remember, I had stacks and stacks of corn to take to market, but I had no way to carry them there. I thought how nice it would be to have a railroad train of my own. So I put a bell and a whistle and an old smokestack in Hatchy Hen's nest. I waited and waited, and she hatched, and and the nest got bigger and bigger, and I was sure she was hatching a train. But she didn't. Do you know what she hatched?
Do you see what that is? Is that a train? No, that's not a train. You're right, that's a whole boat. It's called a steamboat. Oh my goodness.
She hatched a steamboat, and we lived 100 miles from the nearest river. I never did get to use that steamboat. But the best thing Hatchy Hen ever did was the time she saved the whole farm. One dark night, Grandma and I woke up, and we could hear Hatchy Hen shouting, "Cut, cut, 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 cut." We looked out the window. The barn was on fire. I ran out and turned on the hose to sprinkle the fire, but the hose was too short. The water wouldn't reach the fire. The barn would surely burn. Grandma ran into the house and got Hatchy Hen. She filled the nest with spaghetti and put the hen on top. "Now hatch, hen," she said. Hatch in a hurry." Hatchy Hen settled down on the nest and started to hatch. She hatched so hard that her feathers stood up and her eyes turned bright green. In a minute or two, she hopped off the nest, and what do you think she'd hatched out of that spaghetti?
What do you think she hatched? You're right. Good job.
Fire hose. 200 feet of fire hose. I hitched it to the faucet and put out the fire, and that's how Hatchy Hen saved the farm.
See Grandma giving her the spaghetti? And then she hatched out this beautiful hose to put out the fire. Good job, Hatchy Hen. Whew, that was scary.
She'd be here right now, hatching out toys and boots and things for you if we hadn't lost her in the big snow of 44. But that's another story, which I will tell you some other time.
Oh, tell me now, Grandpa, I begged. Please tell me about the big snow.
Well, I can't, Grandpa said. There aren't any more pages in this book.
What? Oh, no. He's right. There aren't any more pages. I looked, and sure enough, Grandpa was right. There aren't any more pages in this book. I'll just have to wait until Grandpa goes to the page store and gets more pages. Then I can hear about the big snow of 44. Oh, I hope he hurries. And I hope you enjoyed Grandpa's Farm. Here we go. By James Flora. Have a great day.